Good afternoon. This is Module 7, all about building capacity. So the first question that we were asked is, what does research say building capacity means? And I think there's a lot to consider when we think about building capacity. When I'm working with teams, I often lean into the work of adaptive schools. I've talked about that before from Thinking Collaborative. And to support team development, we talk always about two things: organizational capacity and professional capacity. I think it's important to delineate those two elements, kind of that system process element, as well as the human capacity when we consider building capacity, because you need to attend to both and they're complementary and they grow together. But if you only focus on one and neglect the other, you're not going to have a sustainable process. And so when we lean into and think about organizational capacity, this came from Hansen, 2017, defined organizational capacity as the application of knowledge and expertise and the enhancement of these factors that contribute to the organizational effectiveness. So I thought that was a nice definition of what we're looking for when we consider organizational capacity and how do we know we're there. And so that's really the what. And then how, so I thought this really blended in the professional piece as well, is a belief held is that building capacity means building relationships. And I think that's true. Like, we're in the business of working with other people, whether that's with students or other adults, and without positive relationships, collaborative relationships, without that culture of working with others, we're not going to be at the capacity we need to see the results that we hope to get. And so again, another way to kind of explain what building capacity means is through four kind of elements from the Georgia Department of Education. And I really liked this linear view of building capacity. While if you looked at each one, it's very complex in itself, but I do like the linear view of kind of thinking around these four elements around the human capacity or the professional capacity side. And the first one goes to selection, and the National Implementation Research Network would definitely agree with this, all about selecting the right people, right? We often say, do you have the right people on the right seat, on the right bus, going in the right direction? And that's first thing that you want to attend to within your locus of control. And so it's really about locating those teachers that are the best fit. And so that is really, what are you looking for? What do your systems need? You know, there's a lot of shining stars out there, but you might not need those for every single position. So what are you looking for? What is the data? Where are the gaps? And who might be the best person to fulfill that gap? And so attracting staff, I really liked that. How might you attract staff to get the right people there? And number two to kind of look at is they talked about then developing staff. Okay, so you have the right people in the right positions, but that's not an end all be all, right? We often know, all of us could probably say, yeah, my undergrad, it was great, right? And I learned some things, but it wasn't until I got into my first position or my current position that, that first year of teaching, you know how each one of us grows so much. And so on the job training needs to be focused on developing the staff to the direction that you want it to go. You can't just leave that up to chance, or you can, but you might not get the results you want, right? So increasing quality on the staff's knowledge and skills. And I would go deeper than this on just developing the knowledge and skills, because often that's where we pause and we think about, given professional learning, they'll go right to application. No, they're going to need a lot of support and a lot of monitoring along the way, but it is about developing that staff. The third element that they're looking at then is retaining staff. Okay, you get the people, you build them up, and how do you keep them there, right? There's lots of high rates of turnover. And so I think this is really important, and it's definitely the most beneficial to student achievement. Again, it's your return on investment, right? You're investing a lot in humans, which is where our resources should be going. But how do we retain staff? And I truly believe this comes back to culture, the culture of your building and the culture of your system, right? And so a strong system will retain staff. A broken system can break staff down, right? And then eventually they'll leave and they'll break them out. So I think that's a really important thing to look at. Okay, once we get to development, what do we need to do to retain staff? And I really think that comes down to empowerment, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And finally, the last piece is then to look at ensuring that staff collaboration. So again, this is about that culture. This is about that reinforcement of what you're wanting. And I really liked and highlighted the word all classrooms, because I think as we go around to different schools and different systems, you see pockets of it, but it's rare that you would see this collaborative culture and empowerment in all classrooms. So we want it to be intentional that we're building this, not by chance. So our next question that we're looking at with capacity then, so now that we understand it as a concept, has building capacity helped support and develop me as a future leader and a school leader? And so, yeah, I think that's the purpose of this process. It's also the purpose of what I'm doing in my current job. And I really liked this quote again from Haddon. And it talked about effective leaders must work to understand the values and opinions of their followers rather than assume absolute authority, to enable a productive dialogue with others about what the group embodies and stands for, and thus how it should act. And so I really liked this quote because it instantly made me go back to distributive leadership. And one advantage that I have in the role that I'm in is that I get to see all sorts of different leadership styles. And so it really, through observing and watching and seeing the effects and the positive and negative, right, implications that different styles have, it's helped me kind of refine and develop who I want to be. And through that, one thing I know to be true is that a powerful leader, which we're going to talk about the difference between leadership and management later, but a powerful leader depends on a distributive leadership model, and that can only exist through building capacity. It doesn't just happen or occur, as well as collective efficacy. Those things have to come through this idea of building the capacity collectively. So let's explore it a little bit further. Let's break it apart and see how building capacity can promote different things, right? Like for one, it can promote reflection. And I would say that building capacity means continual learning. And what I know to be true as well is that we don't learn from our experiences. Otherwise, we'd be geniuses, right? We're experiencing things all the time. What we learn is from reflecting over our experiences, whether that happens intentionally or subconsciously, right? We're reflecting over situations all the time. But this can be a leverage point as leaders we call it mediate thinking, right? Step between a person and their thinking and go through some reflection and help them bring to consciousness things that maybe aren't conscious, helping them see causation, right? When I do this, this happens. Is that what I want? Yes. Okay. Keep doing it. No. Okay. What are some other options? And then really figuring out what are those options to consider. And so when I am a coach, this is probably where 90% of my coaching lives, is in the reflection stage. Well, maybe 80, because I do a lot of planning too. But that can only come through powerful reflection. And I really love this analogy here, which is why I have this picture of the mirrors in the windows. So what does this experience reflect about me as a leader? What's within my locus of control? And then also a window. Look out. What does it tell you about the world and other systems and other people? Think beyond just yourself. And so I really like that analogy when coaching someone through a reflective conversation. Building capacity can also promote cultural responsiveness, or if done right, it should, right? And so a couple of things that I really pulled out of these articles that I connected with is first around the student learning, but really disaggregated data. Are we looking at subgroup data? Are we pulling it apart? Are we actually asking the questions and not making the assumptions on who is responding to instruction, but who is not? And what about us is maybe a block to this subgroup, right? To any type of subgroup. And we should be looking at multiple, any of them that we support. And why are they not having access to, and why are they not obtaining that instruction? And so I think that comes down to when we look at the data and awareness on our cultural responsiveness from a student perspective. Additionally, I pulled this quote as well from Brandt and Haxey about the passion and commitment for learners' proficiency and intercultural growth. So we can learn so much from other people. And oftentimes we miss opportunities because we make assumptions. And so knowing how to engage in dialogue, knowing how to ask the right questions, knowing how to be reflective and curious will help us tap into those things and really harvest that diversity of the wisdom that's around us and then outside of us as well, right? And I say us, meaning a system, and where can we grow? Because there's lots of opportunities for growth within that. It also promotes digital literacy. I really kind of, that's a whole world to explore, right? Like looking at the mentoring and the induction and opportunities that technology can bring to expedite that process, to also be more of a global citizen to build capacity quicker. We have access to so many more resources and tools. And there's just a variety of ways. I would say this really digs into the how to make building capacity effective and efficient, as well as building the capacity of ourselves as digital literate educators. And this is a big one for me. This is the work that I do around school improvement, and I would even say systemic improvement. And so I really connected again to what Cobb had said here, because you can have this beautiful plan with all the strategies and all the right things named, but if you don't have the capacity for execution, doesn't really matter. So it all comes down to coherence between what's written on paper and practice. And that's not going to happen overnight. It's a process to get to that desired state. And a tool is to build capacity. And one tool and one framework, I guess, that I really, really liked, and I'm going to take and borrow and give credit to Des Moines Public Schools, of course, is this one here, because it really helps look at all the levels. Oftentimes when we talk about school improvement, we all jump to intervening with the school level or at the student level, which is where our impact should lie. However, that doesn't mean that's where all of our energy lies. So depending on what level we're at, we're focusing on building the capacity at that level. And that's how the system can be sustained. And we're going to look at that a little bit further here as well. How does promoting or building capacity promote student success? So as I just said before, every little thing should come back to student achievement, everything we do. And why do we build the capacity within whatever thing we need to be building? Because of the impact on student learning. And when students aren't being successful, we need to go back and take a look, what's not built within our capacity, organizational, professional, what do we need to attend to? So it really is complex and simple at the same time, because there aren't a lot of target points that we're looking at beyond student success. And so we have to keep bringing it back to that. And oftentimes we don't. And so again, that it really comes back to this idea of the achievement gaps and finding those out and why are they there? And again, piquing that curiosity, not blaming, and then that mirror of reflecting back on our system, because our system is perfectly designed to get the results that we get. So what about our system needs to change or grow? Or maybe it's a small success that you want to go to scale and maximize. And one way to do this that was written in an article, Maribel Childress said states have taken a varied approach to developing and implementing teacher performance. So these are evaluation models, most common, and I know you can't read them, but you can see the outline of the Charlotte Danielson and the Robert Marzano evaluation tools. And again, I'm going to emphasize, when implemented correctly, they have the ability to look at a teacher's capacity for instructional practices through a variety of lenses that go all the way from technical to social emotional to pedagogy, everything. And so again, this can be an amazing tool for building capacity. It can be a form of a needs assessment. It can be the form of feedback. It can inform professional learning. It can inform goal setting. So there's a variety of ways to use this when done well, and not just evaluation, right? It has to be a whole framework of implementation to be done well. But I appreciate her bringing that to the table to look at student success, because this is our leading indicator. The teacher is the number one leading indicator. And so that's where our energy needs to lie when we want to improve student success. Okay, so question number 8 talked about digital technology in ethical ways. And so there's a couple of things that came to mind as I was reading. One, it's knowing the tools that we have available and knowing those well, so that way we know how to use them and maximize them for effectiveness and efficientness. Systems and processes, again, what about technology can make the process and the system effective and efficient? And then strategy. So are we using it well? So I think these are safeguards, because sometimes technology can feel like a next shiny penny and we always need to be keeping up with the Joneses, if you will, but going back to ethical, we have to be able to really justify and provide clarity around why we have these technology tools, why they're necessary, and are we using them in the way that they should be used and for the purposes, and is it enhancing what we're doing? Because there's too much money that could be at stake otherwise, and time, right, of additional resources as well. And finally, the last question is, how does it help identify leadership capacity in myself? School, faculty, staff, everyone. So the first thing, like we had mentioned before, that I want to talk about is this idea about a leader versus a manager. And I thought the graphic that Baldanza had was very powerful. And I have another one here I thought that showed the difference between a manager and a leader leading the way, and a manager kind of bossing others around. Now, I will say, while it's a good visual and it kind of helps us get the picture, I don't think a leader necessarily always just needs to be right there. I think there's opportunities to empower and lead and to build up to the strength of it. And next. So there's also effective leadership, which involves identifying goals and the means to achieving them. And it is not the exercise of power. So really, again, this going back to setting the desired state, setting the vision, providing clarity, and you are motivating people to do this, and you're influencing them through their beliefs and their values, and it is not manipulative in any type of way. Trying to use power can be manipulative and controlling. This is exactly opposite. This is saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, and here is why. And we can't move forward until we have clarity around those things, because people are passionate and they need to connect what they're doing to that work. And so there's multiple ways to always do that, and you need all perspectives on board, so it's worth the dialogue. And building capacity means actively distributing leadership. So we had talked about this before, and this is a belief that I hold as a leader, that the system is built by many leaders, and it comes to empowering. And the goal of the principal, you have a lot of accountability as a principal, but my main goal as a future leader would be to empower those to lean into the strengths and to continually ensure that the system is working at full capacity. Well, that means maximizing and empowering the leadership in others to have that distributive model. And so that is about sometimes giving up control. It's about taking the time to bring others in, to have those conversations. And often the biggest barrier is, we don't have time to do it. I'm just going to do it myself. I'm going to save people from having to do this, right? But they're keeping people from the learning, and we're keeping them from getting engaged. So while that might feel like a short-term win, it's going to create long-term deficits by the end. And so here's a little reflection. So here is my standard correlation and why this is relevant to the work that I do. And definitely had me reflect over how I'm going to kind of implement this. I had a lot of ideas, but through this time, it helped me kind of sort through what I need to do as a future leader, and often who I need to be, at what level I need to stay at, and kind of giving role clarity to that as well. And here are the references for this assignment. Thank you.